I love that you have this beautiful new album out now, MexiAmericana. But I'm curious to start at the beginning. I know that some people would describe your sound as like Tejano, some say just Latin. Do you have a particular label or a genre that you tend to go with for the music that you make?
I definitely think that it is Mexican regional, just because it's a little bit of everything, and it really encapsulates the region that I'm not from Mexico, but the region that I'm in, which is really deep South Texas. And I say deep South Texas because it's literally on the point, boot tip is what I say, of Texas. I'm really far down there. And so whenever I say South Texas, people go, oh, San Antonio. And I'm like, no, further. Corpus? Nope, keep going. And so because I represent a border community, I'm on the border. I see the border wall every day. It's like that's just a part of our life, is this very clear border culture and the mixing of that. So for me, it's definitely a Mexican regional is probably the best, encapsulation of it, because Latin is a little bit too broad. Mexican regional is a little bit more understanding why there is so much accordion in my music. So,
Who are some of your musical influences then?
Linda Ronstadt, Canciones de mi Padre was such a very pivotal thing for me as a young kid, especially that representation at that level. She was everywhere at the time. She was rock and she was Mexican. So being able to be the quote unquote rock princess, and then also being able to showcase her raíces, her roots, in a way that was truly genuine to her and to her experience, was really impactful for me. Another one is going to be Freddie Fender. I'm from Brownsville. San Benito's 10 minutes away. And so that isn't far. And so because of that, I was heavily influenced by that sound, by his impact in the culture as well, but also just musically. You have two Mexican Americans, that are making it big in country and making it big by taking their sounds with them and doing it in such a genuine way, in a way that really feels authentic to who they are. And being able to see that definitely was a huge inspiration for me as a kid.
You have this beautiful album, MexiAmericana. What's the themes that you explore on it?
I definitely I definitely explore duality. The duality of culture that I have been born and raised in, and the the trials and tribulations of dealing with that while trying to find my identity in it. Um, there's always a saying, I know a lot of people have heard it. You have to be more Mexican than the Mexicans and more American than the Americans. And it's exhausting, and it's the truth. And so for a lot of my young adult life, having to balance that duality along with trying to live a life, find love, find it badly, and then eventually getting to a place where I was just single and really delving inwards. I wanted to really express the feminine joy, the feminine rage, the feminine experience as a dual culture individual.
It's so beautifully well-rounded as well, and it just paints such a beautiful, rich path of your Mexican and American heritage throughout this 11-track album. What's your songwriting process when it comes to music? Do you think of a beat and then you craft lyrics around it and then maybe add an accordion here and your guitar a little bit there? Is there even a process that tends to be typical for you?
Well, for sure, the typical process is I'm driving. Um, that is honestly like the number one process. I am driving somewhere, and most of this record was done while traveling, and kind of having that time that I think we all kind of get when we're just driving long stretches of road and you just can't help but reflect. And that's one part of it. And the real major part of it, though, is the songwriting for me, especially doing a bilingual record, is it comes out as it comes out. So if the English part comes out first, or the English song comes out first, then it comes out first. And usually I really like to stick to a hook and a chorus and then build from there. Like what's the center at the heart of the song that I want to get across, and then building on that. There's other songs that didn't happen with. And so this was really, kind of moving from that songwriting space of like, oh, let me just focus on the hook and the thing that's going to be super catchy, to really trying to build stories. And whether it was covers that I picked, a song that I selected, and other songs that I wrote and co-wrote with people, this allowed me to really express my agency in regards to songwriting, in regards to song selection and producing. Because I've learned over the years, this is my fourth album. And so the other three were, from the first one where I didn't know anything to now I can finally just confidently say, hey, I knew when to put accordion in. I fought for when I wanted a certain sound because I knew it was it was something I could live with. It was something that I could be happy with and put out to the world. Because a lot of the times it could easily be that like you go, oh, well, I just want something that's catchy, that sounds like what everyone else is making. Or you could take the risk, which is, what I'm doing in a sense is like saying, hey, you know what, I'm gonna risk saying, hey, this is my ear. This is how I see country music, Americana music, and how it relates to my life and how I hear it and see it.
Yes, I was going to ask you. I mean, you have 3 self-produced albums and 2 EPs under your belt. But for this one, worked with wonderful Grammy-winning producers like John Ontiveros and Mariano Herrera. There's beautifully talented individuals you worked with for this album. And even El Dusty you worked with. I'm so glad to see that he lent you a hand, because I know his music is so iconic when it comes to Latin music, and not just Tejano artists as well, but I know he's a Texas artist himself, a Texas-based artist himself. So this is wonderful. What was it that made you feel comfortable handing over the reins this time to let someone work on the music you've made and the production aspects?
Well, I think for the first 3 records, as much as I produced it, it was more me learning. It was more me learning from everybody, not so much like really hands-on understanding. I would like vouch for myself, but not to the extent that it was with this record. This record truly is like, if we're going to say which one's produced by me, this one is fully me, because I could understand it better. I could verbalize it better. I wasn't kind of guessing anymore. And I really was owning what the sound was going to be. And it really helped because this all started with Mariano and Dusty. We started the process with them, and they were like, no, we're gonna have you mix it. We're gonna have you we're gonna have you master it. We're gonna go through this entire process with you, because we need you to level up. We need you to reach like where your potential is. And so having support like that from other indie artists in the community, that have that experience working with high level, like superstars, they don't work with just nobody, they work with some high level names, but you look at me and they go, no, we can do this. You just have to like take the process as it is. And so over the last 2 years, being able to really take my time understanding what I'm doing was really amazing. Being able to work with Wil-Dog, Wil-Dog Appers, the founder of Also Motley, Manuel Miranda, who, has like these people come from a line of Grammy winners, Grammy producers. They've worked with some of the biggest names there. And yet, like little me, they want to nurture and grow. And that environment helped so much for me to understand my story, my voice in all of this. MexiAmericana is definitely something that came from a village of people who understood that duality of culture, people who were Mexican American, lived in those kinds of households, who understood those kinds of sounds, the Chicano, cumbia, Tejano, Tex-Mex sounds. I don't think it could have been made if they didn't understand that really innately.
Well, Que Jueva is a beautiful track. That's the debut off of this particular album. What made it the perfect starter for Veronique fans?
I think Que Hueva was my way to really showcase the fact that I like that song was I wrote it within a day. I was washing dishes. I was annoyed that I even had to. And like and there was like so much other, things going on. Roe v. Wade just got struck down. There was like, like again, this album really came from those moments where I was reflecting, whether it was quietly or loudly, because obviously I was singing while washing the dishes, coming up with this melodic line and then going with it. And I wanted something that really touched on my past, which is in Tejano and Tex-Mex and Mexican regional, and go and bringing it to the future. Because the last time we really probably heard something that really exemplified Mexican regional in country music, that really had an impact in the sense of emotionally, and yes, you could say charts too, but just emotionally for me was Before the Next Teardrop Falls, where it really drove home that sound and that emotion that comes from the type of music that we create. And so it was perfect. Like I picked Que Hueva for the simple fact that it was a best representation of where I came from and where I'm going and who I am in the country music industry.
I'm sure you've heard from a number of fans how poignant and how reflective it really is and inspirational for them. What kind of messages have you received from Que Jueva?
Que Hueva, the biggest response I have received is just like a gape, mouths open, shock at the part. There's a line in there, and if you know what line, I'm not even gonna say it. Like you have to listen to it to know what line it is, and that is just so bold. A lot of people, when they ask me about that song, they're like, "Who made you mad?" And I'm like, I don't think it's directed at any one person. Truly, that song is definitely targeted at everybody. Like it's just the overall frustration of being a woman in this modern era and the frustrations that come with it, the ideals of womanhood and how those are unfortunately still on women, despite the fact that like we have moved way past that. Those cornerstones of propriety are no longer as tied to us as they used to be. And so yeah, that's definitely one of the biggest things. The biggest comment I get is that it's very bold. It's fun. Like that was the other one. It's like it's so fun. It's such a fun song, but it has such a wild, a message. And I'm like, well, I mean, I could write a sad song. I could if I really wanted to. But I think you can get the message across with a lot of honey and sugar and it stay with people just as much as you can with, just verbally, and melodically being sad and making them think. So I kind of want to play in that space.
What do you hope lingers with people who explore MexiAmericana as a whole? Or maybe what emotions do you hope lingers with people that explore this album?
I hope that, people take from it that this is meant to be a celebration of, being a Mexican American, um, in all its facets. And I really wanted to touch on that in the language because easily you could write MexiAmericana as an album and do a bunch of, Spanish country songs and do them completely in Spanish, and nobody would bat an eyelash. But to do a bilingual record and do one that has songs that code switch between Spanish and English that really encapsulate that kind of verbal and linguistic phenomena that happens with Mexican Americans, I think is really important for just the overall culture of our music. We're not just Spanish music. We're not music that's predominantly in the Spanish language. We're not, only music that is done predominantly in English. There is a middle, and I guess if I can do anything or have anyone take anything from it, is that the duality of culture and the duality of language should be celebrated in whatever facet that it takes, because you are not your language. You are not where you're born. You are who you are by the family and, just your culture, the culture that you celebrate truly. Because a lot of Mexican Americans, I know a lot of people have heard this before, the no sabo kids, people who didn't get that language learning right, the moment they came out of the womb, get it really hard here. And there's not a lot of grace extended to that. And so that's what this record is meant to do. This record is meant to say, there's a lot of grace and love and joy in being somebody who has two cultures in one, and that it's really truly a blessing in the long run, and that the journey itself is, you're not alone in that journey. Because for me, that was kind of the hardest part. Doing this record made me have to reflect a lot on my own journey of what I allowed in my life, what I gave up, what I had to relearn and bring back into my life when it came to my family and my culture and what I wanted to be. And that's a hard conversation to have in your 20s and 30s, and I think if people can have that conversation sooner with my album and celebrate themselves sooner and love themselves, and for all their facets and complexities, then I'm happy.
I have to ask, who would you love to collaborate with on a song in the future?
Oh man, that's a good one. Dolly Parton and Garth Brooks separately.
That way you have their separate experiences, you get each unit.
I would like separate experiences with Dolly Parton and Garth Brooks. Garth Brooks, personally, for me, it's actually a very personal story. I actually haven't told anybody very much about this particular story, because it happened back in 2001, and he was doing his send-off tour. He was doing that tour, but unfortunately there was a local tragedy that happened in my vicinity in the Rio Grande Valley, is what they call it. And so they asked him to come out and help them raise funds, because it was like a huge deal. And he came out and he played in the rain. They thought he was going to cancel. He played in the rain. We got to watch him and see him. And as a young girl, that really touched me. That really, impacted me, because this is a man who has who knows how many million people at, Madison Square Garden, or I'm sorry, not Madison Square Garden, Central Park. Sorry, there we go. Central Park. And, for somebody at that level, like SNL, like huge star, to come down to our little neck of the woods, I'm telling you, deep South Texas, beyond San Antonio, beyond where people know, to make this happen, and then ends up donating the money. And, that really stuck with me. That really stuck with my parents. I knew from that moment on, that music had such a deeper effect on people than just putting a CD in a CD player, for those who remember CD players. But and so it just became clear to me how much this music touched people, and to me, him doing that really showed how impactful country music was. And so it stuck with me. It really did. He is the modern artist, you know, that a lot of us kids from the 90s remember. But for me, that was really impactful to me. I and it impacted so many people. It really did. And to be able to work with him in any facet, truly would be an honor in any way, because that means that to me, again, it's a full circle moment. And Dolly is the same. She's a woman in this industry who has faced a lot of stuff, a lot of you know a lot of troubles that a lot of women who are in the music industry deal with. And so to be able to work with either of those people who in a sense could have been seen as outcasts of their time, who really were genuinely themselves, they didn't change who they were, I think would be like a full circle moment for me, because that's what I hope to put out in the world.
With that in mind, then, what would you like to say to everyone who are fans and supporters of the incredible music that you make?
I want to thank everybody, all of the fans, for just making this transition possible in regards to just the music I want to make and the creativity that I want to explore. A lot of fans knew that I was going in this direction. They just didn't know when. This has been this has been something I've been like slowly working my way up to since 2016, when I did Wasted Days as just a single, and I was just like, okay, let me hope that this works, and just adding it to my set list and adding country music to my set list, and it was just something that eventually happened. And because of that, I am beyond proud that my fans have gotten me to a place where I can do this, and they're along for the ride because they grew with me. They explored with me. They explored the arts with me, and so to be able to do that at this point, I can't thank my fans enough, truly, because I really wouldn't be here at this level doing the things that I'm doing, creating what I'm creating, without their support. I could try to do it on my own, but it feels really special when it's a community of us, um, making these goals together, because I think that's something that we don't talk about when it comes to fans, is that these are like, they're along for the ride with us. They celebrate what we celebrate. They cry when we cry. They feel our feelings in a sense, in their own personal way. And so these goals that we reach, these awards or recognition, it's a recognition of all of us in a sense. We're all kind of a community, and so I appreciate that community for making me and putting me where I needed to be, because it wouldn't have happened without them.